Bills Mafia, what's going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. We are here to talk all NFL draft, free agency, NFL honors, and we got a special interview to talk about Troy Franklin. Let's get it. Bills Mafia, what is going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. Glad you're here on a Thursday evening here on the Cover One Sports Network. Going to be a lot of fun tonight. I have a ton planned for you, a lot to talk about, some really cool stuff that we're going to break down. But I'm your host, Thomas DeLoss, and man, I'm glad that you've chosen to hang out with us this evening. Thank you for tuning in, or if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. If you are out there, you can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify, YouTube, or however you choose to pod. And if you're watching on Twitter right now, come on in, join us on the YouTube page. You can find the tweet on the Cover One Twitter handle. You can check it out on the Cover One YouTube page. You'll know where to find us. Also, guys, want to make sure that you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube page and that notification button as well. It's going to let you know every single time any one of our Cover One shows is live, and we do very much appreciate it. You can also hit that super chat button. It'll let you get right to me, get your comment at the top of the screen, and join the conversation faster. Guys, we are in the offseason. I know it's sad, but lots to talk about, lots to get into, and as part of that, I want to make sure you guys are subscribed to the Cover One Pass. It is the best in terms of coverage across all content creating for Buffalo Bills. We provide you in-depth analysis, everything you're looking for, and more, including this Slack chat that everybody so much loves. Incredible inside content like Greg Thompson's salary cap glossary. I mean, there's so much that we provide you guys. So make sure you go ahead and hit that. But tonight, guys, tons and tons to talk about. We are going to be talking to Spence McLaughlin of LockedOnDucks about Oregon wide receiver and wide receiver train favorite Troy Franklin. Big topic to talk about. We're going to be touching on the NFL honors, which are going to be happening tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, just following my show. We'll be touching on that, what you guys think, who we think is going to win. We're also going to talk about free agency and the NFL draft, as per usual. Going to do a mock draft tonight. I feel like we're going to do a mock draft every night. Every single show, we're going to kind of go over it and kind of chop up what we think is going to happen. We're going to have our damn segment, and then we're going to send you guys packing onto next week. So, guys, while we're getting into it and what we're talking about in terms of the Cover One Pass, let's get right into hearing from two of the best, Greg Thompson, Aaron Quinn, the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Boys, take it away.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
There you are, guys. That was two of the best, Aaron Quinn and Greg Thompson. Guys, we're going to start the show off. We're going to talk about the big guy, the big gun, what everybody kind of wants to hear about. Heading into the NFL draft this coming April, there is a lot of anticipation for the Buffalo Bills, one of which is the wide receiver train. Bills fans are clamoring, myself included. You need more weapons, right? We know Gabe Davis is leaving. We know Trent Sherfield's leaving. We don't know what the future is with the rest. And you still got Stephon Diggs. So why not go ahead and get a wide receiver? And why not get one in the first round? So that being said, I had a very, very special opportunity this afternoon to talk with Spencer McLaughlin of LockedOnDucks and to hear a little bit more about Oregon Ducks wide receiver Troy Franklin. Here, Bills Mafia, what's going on? We are here taping a pre-recorded segment, and I want to apologize right out of the gate. I am home today with my son, so if you hear some noises, some banging, some screaming, I'm trying my best to keep him kind of occupied while we do this. But that being said, very fortunate to have a awesome guest on today, Spencer McLaughlin from LockedOnDucks. He is going to be telling us all about Troy Franklin, Oregon's receiver. So, Spencer, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Great to be on with you and talking to Bills Mafia out there, the craziest fans in the NFL. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, it's I'm really excited. I think this is, Bills fans, obviously the season did not end as people thought, and
I wasn't going to bring it up.
It's okay. It's okay.
Hey, I'm an Oregon fan, man. We got that in common.
So, yeah, we jumped right in, and basically Bills fans and a lot of people across Bills Mafia have been riding this wide receiver train. And one of the big names this year is Troy Franklin, wide receiver out of Oregon. So hence why I brought you in here, kind of give us a little bit of an in-depth analysis, what people can know, what to expect, and kind of maybe get their excitement to a fever pitch in regards to Troy Franklin. So what I'll do from the onset is I'm just going to let you go, and I'm going to let you kind of talk about what you, as, part of Locked On, part of, the Oregon Ducks media kind of content creating community, what had you seen so far from Troy Franklin up into this year and into this year?
Yeah, a guy who just continuously got better over the course of his college career until he had the best individual receiving season in the history of Oregon football. I'm not overstating things there. Until he opted out of the bowl game and Tez Johnson played, he had the receptions record tied with Tez Johnson for a single season. He has the all-time Oregon single season receiving yardage and touchdowns record with over 1,300 yards this year and 14 scores. And so he is quite literally the best, at the very least, the most productive Oregon receiver of my lifetime. There have been some other great wideouts, but you'd be hard-pressed to find one that has played for the Ducks better than Troy Franklin. Now, Oregon hasn't exactly been wide receiver U when it comes to putting guys into the NFL, but Franklin is going to have an opportunity to kind of shift that narrative. He will be a first or early second round pick, and I think that he is just such a talented guy for a number of reasons. And if you put him in the right system, I think Oregon fans are anxiously waiting to see, where he gets drafted. We're waiting to hear where Bo Nix will end up going and what sort of fit that'll be and whatnot. But with Troy Franklin, I think that's the guy Oregon fans are most excited to see outside of Bo Nix, because if you put him in the right system, that can be a perennial 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, and he's someone who, as I said, just has got the work ethic to not just improve on the field, but improve off the field. When he was recruited to Oregon, 2021, he was a part of an, at the time, historic recruiting class for the Ducks. They just topped it this season, but, he was one of the headline recruits there in 2021, along with a guy named Dante Thornton, who transferred to Tennessee. His career hasn't quite panned out, but when those two guys came in together, their mantra amongst the Oregon fan community was the skinnies, right? And it was unleash the skinnies. And it was a very run-heavy offense under Mario Cristobal. He left for Miami. The bowl game took place. Joe Moorhead was calling plays. And all of a sudden, they were throwing the ball down the field, and the skinnies were making plays. And so going into 2022 is all about unleash the skinnies, because they were thin guys. Like Dante Thornton, 6'5", Franklin's around 6'3", and they were kind of thin. Thornton then transferred to Tennessee. Franklin stayed to play for Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham, and he bulked up a little, and he had an 800-yard season. But then going into his junior year, he bulked up a lot, and you saw it in the spring game where you looked at him and went, "Whoa, that guy is a much different looking person than the player we saw for the previous 2 years." And I bring all this up to say This is someone who's coachable. This is someone who's got a work ethic on and off the field to be at his best, and he has made himself into a dynamic NFL prospect.
Now with that, obviously we've seen his name kind of move up the draft boards. I think obviously you know the names, Marvin Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, but it seems Troy Franklin's stock has, in probably the last 4 weeks, really kind of risen. What do you think about Troy Franklin that makes him such like an appetizing wide receiver coming into the NFL? What about him is something that NFL teams would say, I want him as my wide receiver one?
You ever see Top Gun?
I personally have never seen Top Gun.
Gosh, what are we? Well, that ends my appearance on this show. Okay, anyway, there is an iconic line of many in that particular film, my mom's all-time favorite movie, in which Tom Cruise states that he has a need. He has a need for speed, and that is what Troy Franklin has done as well as any receiver in the draft, is make everybody understand he is a fast wide receiver. The best clip is against USC. Oregon's already up 7-0 because USC's defense was a joke on a 77-yard touchdown to Tez Johnson. And on 3rd and 13, he cooks his DB who's trying to play off because he doesn't want to get beat over the top, and he just runs like a glance route at the sticks. And Bo Nix puts it on him, and then he just runs away from everybody. It looked like high school tape. Honestly, it looked like high school tape because he's just so much faster. That's where he's at his best. Catch the ball down the field on the run. He's a good route runner, but stretching the field vertically, that's what he brings to the table. There's another great touchdown that Bills fans, I'm sure, have seen at this point against Texas Tech, where he beats the corner off the line of scrimmage, and then again, he just runs past him. He's just faster, and he's got good acceleration and good agility, but his top-end speed, you get him the ball on the move in space, the way Josh Allen can deliver the ball. I think of Troy Franklin as like a higher ceiling version of Gabe Davis. You know, he can certainly run more than just a go route, but if you hit him on a deep shot or a deep post or a post corner or whatever, and you put the ball on the numbers, he is going to make a big play. He's a big play waiting to happen, and I think that's why his draft stock has risen is, you know, he can make contested catches. He made a lot of those at Oregon over the last couple of years. He can run the whole route tree, but I think his best ability is, you know, in that Gabe Davis or, you know, to think elsewhere around the NFL, that Tyreek Hill kind of role. Guys that when you think of what they're doing on the field to make an impact, it's getting down the field, making big explosive plays. That's Troy Franklin.
And that's been, I mean, quite frankly, a big reason why people love Troy Franklin is he just has that speed. And for Bills fans, one of the biggest issues with our team was the lack of speed across the field. We just didn't have it. And we like Gabe Davis, but Gabe Davis is a long strider, not so much of a sheer speed wide receiver, but absolutely with that deep threat thought. And the one thing I will say is, I guess my concern, and maybe you can kind of extrapolate on this, there's been concerns about his drops. He's had quite a few drops this year for Oregon. And then on top of it, a lot of what people say is he's more of a body catcher than a hand catcher. What have you seen from him in his progression with Oregon? What has he done at least to improve that and try to become, you know, obviously with a wide receiver in the NFL, more prolific and standing out?
I agree with the body catcher over the hand catcher part of it. You know, he has a tendency, though, to just come up with the football when you put him in a 50-50 situation. You know, I think the best hands in the draft belong to Roma Dunze, even more so than Marvin Harrison. Like, they're 1A, 1B, in my view. But the best hands in the draft are Roma Dunze. I don't think Franklin has Roma Dunze's hands. I also don't think Roma Dunze has got the yards after catch ability that Troy Franklin has. And that's why I think, you know, system and fit is important for any football player, and these two guys are no exception to that particular, you know, dynamic. So I think that for Franklin, he is someone who has good hands. I would not describe them as the best, softest that I have ever seen. It is certainly something that plagued him more early in his career than later, but he is certainly more of a body catcher. And again, I look at Tyreek Hill and I think the same sort of thing. You know, I don't think Tyreek Hill and think great hands. I think him just catching the ball on his body or making it work. I think Troy Franklin is capable of being just a bigger version of that, like literally bigger. Tyreek Hill's like 5'9", 5'10", whatever he is. Troy Franklin is every inch of 6'3", and he's got tremendous timing on 50-50 balls. And, you know, Oregon didn't have that as a feature of their offense all the time, but he's a burner, and when you do that, you're going to take some downfield shots, and he made a lot of catches in traffic. But I definitely agree, as much as I like Franklin, that, you know, he's not someone that I would describe as having necessarily the best hands. I don't think it's a liability. I just don't consider it one of his plus characteristics.
Now, in regards to that, obviously you mentioned they call him the skinny, right?
Well, we used to.
Right. And he's still fairly skinny. He's 187, 6'3", right? When you're that big, normally you're close to 200 pounds. What would you say? Because a big part of what people have said is that they play a lot of off man on him. They'll play 5 to 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. They don't really play a lot of press man against him. Is there cause for concern from what you've seen that he could struggle in the next level playing against man corners, just because of the fact that he is a little bit less upper, you know, with that upper body strength?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think it'd be if I were an NFL draft scout, I think that's the biggest red flag that I would have on him is that, you know, you look at the Pac-12 championship game, for instance, Jabbar Muhammad, who's now an Oregon Duck because, you know, college football, Jabbar Muhammad really had the clamps on him in that game, and Franklin was struggling to separate on shorter routes, and I think it's because Muhammad is a very physical man-to-man press corner, and so, you know, that's definitely the area where he can improve the most. It's not to say that he isn't capable. I mean, you can find plenty of highlights or catches or examples of him, you know, beating a guy to the inside and then getting himself enough room to make a contested catch. In that same Pac-12 title game, you know, Oregon had to have a 4th and 5 to keep their hopes alive in the second half, and, you know, he runs a slant over the middle. It's pretty well covered, but Bo Nix puts it right on the money, and he makes the catch in traffic. And I think that is something that he is capable of doing, but I think that's where he can grow. You know, like I was talking about that USC play earlier, that's peak Troy Franklin. That's when he is at his best, is when you are having him push the ball down the field, right? Whether that's a dig route, like they ran a lot of dig routes with him this past year, or what they called against Utah, 2 sticks. And he was the guy that Bo Nix looked to in those intermediate routes. And I think that he did an outstanding job and does a great job. Middle of the field, down the field, that's where he really thrives. You can get him the ball on screens if you want, because he's certainly got yards after catch ability. But I think in the NFL, when he's going against pro DBs that are going to be physical with him, you know, you're best suited to have him as the deep threat, and he can make those sorts of plays. But certainly the area where he can improve the most, he's got a great release. You know, I don't think he's incapable of getting better, but certainly I think some time on the jugs machine can do him some good. But, you know, he's got a really, really quick first step. 2 plays in particular, one against an all Pac-12 caliber corner in Cha Smith-Wade at Washington State, and then another in the Colorado game. His release, like if you don't get a good hand on him and you don't jam him effectively, he is such a fluid athlete. I mean, among the most fluid I've seen at wide receiver come through Oregon. He's just 0 to 100 really, really quick, and does an outstanding job of using his feet and his explosiveness to get off the line of scrimmage, and then he accelerates quickly and gets by you. So, you know, I think the counter to that is try to get up and be physical with him. But, you know, we see good offensive coordinators. The counter to that, put him in motion. Makes it really, really hard to jam. And if you do that with him, he's going to be able to get open, because they used him in motion concepts. They used him on some sprint out concepts as well. But, you know, the best plays from Troy Franklin definitely come down the field, and working, you know, inside the first down sticks is where he can most improve.
So to kind of encapsulate everything, what I want you to do, speak directly to Bills Mafia. Tell Bills Mafia what they can expect if at 28 Buffalo Bills go up and select Troy Franklin to be Josh Allen's new favorite weapon. What are they getting?
They're getting a guy that can be a second or third round pick in fantasy football. I mean, that's where the ceiling is with him, because he's just such a big play threat, and you pair him with Josh Allen, that is a match made in heaven. I mean, Josh Allen is just a bigger, faster, stronger arm Bo Nix, and Bo Nix and Troy Franklin had quite the chemistry over the last couple of years. Like, Bo Nix's favorite downfield shot was to Troy Franklin all the time. I mean, I'm trying to think right now of deep shots that weren't to Troy Franklin last year, or the last 2 years, really. And I mean, there were a couple, but not many. Like, that's what it was. And so I think Allen to Franklin is just a home run waiting to happen. You know, I think Jamison Williams a little bit with the Detroit Lions. Burner, take the top off the defense. I think Franklin can be more refined than that and not be a one-trick pony, though, as I talked about, he still has areas where he can improve. But I feel like he's just such an explosive playmaker that when you put him with Josh Allen and you look at the way that he runs routes down the field, like Oregon ran some sprint out concepts with Bo Nix that involved flood concepts, or they'd run out and up and then back down on a comeback. He can go to the ground and make a catch. He can work the sideline. He can work the middle of the field. He can go anywhere he wants to. And Josh Allen can, of course, throw the ball anywhere. But when I think Josh Allen throwing 50 to 70-yard touchdowns, Troy Franklin on the receiving end, that all lines up.
Perfect. One thing I do got to ask, one of my guys mentioned if you had any insight on Katano Oladapo, being as an Oregon State guy. Any feelings on him? Yeah,
solid player. And you look at that defensive staff and pedigree and the coaching staff in general that he is coming from. Yeah, I wouldn't overlook that guy at all. I don't know specifically what his NFL draft grades are, but Oregon State has never been incapable of putting guys into the NFL that are good players. You look at Jordan Poyer, for instance. He's been a fantastic player with the Bills for a very, very long time. And Oladapo, very instinctual football player. And if you really want to feel, excited about the prospect of having him, if the Bills do end up selecting him at some point, go watch the Oregon State 2022 secondary. 2023, they took a step back. They didn't have as many guys, but they had probably the best secondary in the Pac-12 in 2022 and one of the best defenses in the conference that year as well. And Oladapo was at the heart of it. And he was there, and they had some other really good players like Jaden Grant, Rajon Wright, but Oladapo, that entire secondary, when I think of them, I think instincts, and I think his instincts are very, very high. I think for him, it's whether or not he's got the speed and physical traits to match up. But if the NFL thinks that he does, I think that's a guy who certainly can be a solid player on your back end.
Beautiful. Well, Bills Mafia, you heard it there for the wide receiver train. You got the best information firsthand, Locked On Ducks. Make sure you give Spencer McLaughlin a follow. I'm sure he's going to be giving more information down the road leading up to the NFL draft. Spencer, I appreciate you, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, great to be on with you. Go Ducks.
There you are, guys. What an interview. Spencer was awesome, providing some really, really high-end insight in regards to Troy Franklin. And we'll continue about, every single week doing this. If there's somebody that you guys want to hear about, I will get somebody on to talk and give us a more in-depth analysis about that, whether it's a wide receiver. It doesn't have to be a wide receiver. If you like Tavondre Sweat, I can go ahead and find somebody, a content creator or somebody that can come in and talk to us more in depth about that player specifically. But moving on, guys, we are going to talk about the NFL honors. Big show tonight. The NFL honors is obviously something that a lot of fans really kind of enjoy watching, just to see if one of their favorites ends up winning an award. Huge hopes for Del Reed, the godfather of Bills Mafia, friend of mine. Hopefully he wins Fan of the Year. No more deserving than what he's done for Roswell, 26 shirts. I mean, the guy is the definition of, philanthropic. I hope to God he wins it because he deserves it. but obviously anybody that's up for that award is very, very deserving. One thing I want to talk about, guys, is Josh Allen. Let's talk about the MVP, guys. Let's really talk about it because, going into today, I thought there was absolutely no shot that Josh Allen had a chance. I didn't think Josh Allen had a chance to win the MVP, and maybe it's me being a bit of a homer that I believe that he still does, but I had a big conversation. If you follow me on Twitter, which, by the way, and I didn't even put it back up there. Let me do that, by the way. Here is my name, at the Thomas DeLoss, right there. You can find me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. I appreciate if you want to hit me with a follow. I'd love to have a conversation. But if you saw my tweets today, I said that there is no other person that deserves the MVP more than Josh Allen. I mean, the 5 finalists, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy. We know Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy they shouldn't be in it. Let's be fair. Let's be honest and objective. They shouldn't be in it. And then Christian McCaffrey. Love Christian McCaffrey. If in a situation where a running back wins it, Christian McCaffrey would be the guy. But in all reality, I don't think anybody but a quarterback should win an award where they're the ones touching the ball more than anybody else. So then it comes down to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And so let's take a look at the stats. Let's take a look at the stats in regards to these two, right? So if you look at the stats, right, Josh Allen is number 1 in fantasy points. Not that it matters, but it gives you perspective of when each week happens. Josh Allen is, above all else, one of the highest scoring people statistically. Then you look at his stats, right? He has more completions and more attempts than Lamar Jackson, which tells you he's throwing the ball more than Lamar Jackson, which as a quarterback generally should lead you in the right direction. In terms of completion percentage, he's 0.7 behind Lamar Jackson. But generally speaking, again, you're going to have a higher completion percentage with lower completions and attempts. And Josh Allen still has a 66.5% completion percentage, which is unbelievable. Josh Allen has almost 700 more yards in passing yards than Lamar Jackson. He has more touchdowns passing, 29-24, than Lamar Jackson. He has been sacked 13 times less than Lamar Jackson. He also has 10 more rushing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson. So here's the only things that he really falls in behind, right? 37 less attempts on the ground, which equate to about just under 300 less yards. He had 7 less long rushes, right? And he had 4 less 20 plus or more rushing attempts. Then he had obviously 11 more interceptions. So the reason I bring up all these stats, and we've had this conversation, we've talked about this stuff. Bills Mafia, you know this. People watching Cover One, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you guys are watching. We've had this conversation, and the reality is, which, by the way, cheers. I hope you guys are all having a great Thursday. When you're talking about MVP, most valuable player, what I think about when I talk about most valuable player, I'm talking about a person whose impact is undeniable. A player who, when they are on the field, they are the one that are really deciding the outcome of the game. And that's not to say Lamar Jackson doesn't, but let's be fair. If you're putting them both side by side, Josh Allen had a defense that maybe in the first couple weeks was great, and it was. And then it was ravaged by all sorts of injuries. Daquan Jones, Trey White, Matt Milano, the list goes on, you know it. And then you look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson had one of the most prolific defenses, period. The Ravens defense was performing at an all-time level, a level that was similar to that of some of the best Ravens defenses with guys like Terrell Suggs and Ray Lewis. So you have that happening, right? Both teams, one having a defense that, granted, thank God for Sean McDermott, even though some of you don't like him, Sean McDermott raised the level of that defense. And then Lamar Jackson, who had a defense that was playing beyond measure. Those two things lining up tell you emphatically that Josh Allen, at the end of the day, is beyond of a shadow of a doubt the quarterback that raised the sea level for the team. And again, that's not to say that what Lamar Jackson does isn't prolific. He is one of the best runners in the NFL. But if you're talking about quarterback or who impacts the game in totality, there is none better than Josh Allen, at least this year. Lamar or Pat Mahomes in other years, absolutely. Pat Mahomes is generally speaking at the top of the list. But if you're looking at when it comes to Josh Allen or this season, Josh Allen is the guy, period. No other conversation can be had. But the problem is, in this situation, what they're going to look at is Lamar Jackson had more wins, Lamar Jackson had less interceptions. And because of those two archaic metrics, Josh Allen is going to, again, be screwed out of an award that he absolutely unequivocally should win. Because if you look at what happened this season, the Bills were 6-6. And did Josh Allen have a piece in that pie? Absolutely. The Jets game to start the season, he absolutely pissed down his leg. Fair enough. When you look at Josh Allen in other games, did he absolutely not live up to expectation? Absolutely. But if in totality, out of the 17 games they played, Josh Allen 15 times left the field with the lead. That tells you what you need to know. That Josh Allen, week over week, gave the Bills the best chance to win. And he did. But the fact that the defense could not hold their own because, sure enough, they just didn't have enough players to roster a team that was competent to compete with some of these high-level, efficient offenses that NFL teams are just trotting out there week over week. You know what's going to happen. And then there was obvious, miscalculations, things with Sean McDermott that he could have been better at, and just totality, a game that just was not happening for the Bills. So if we're talking about it, there is no other person that should win the MVP, period. The fact that Josh Allen likely will not win this award is quite disheartening because, again, it's another year where a guy who is head and shoulders better than Lamar Jackson is going to lose an award to Lamar Jackson. He lost it 2 years in a row to Aaron Rodgers. I get it. Aaron Rodgers was remarkable. This should not be the year. Should not be the year. The only person I would feel even remotely understandable if he lost it to is Christian McCaffrey because of just the numbers that Christian McCaffrey put on the table for a team that's in the Super Bowl. I get it. It would make sense to me because of what was there. Then moving on, you're talking about the Defensive Player of the Year. Deron Bland should not win it. Max Crosby, unbelievable, shouldn't win it. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, TJ Watt. It's going to come down to Myles Garrett or TJ Watt. And if we're being fair, I think Myles Garrett this year should win the award. He played the entire season. He was healthy in the entire year. He should be the guy. Offensive Player of the Year, Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, CeeDee Lamb, Christian McCaffrey, Dak Prescott. It's going to come down to Tyreek and Christian. I think CMC will probably end up pulling this one out. He should, just on sheer numbers alone. Offensive Rookie of the Year. This is an interesting one, guys. Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, Bijan Robinson, CJ Stroud. There's a couple different thoughts here. Puka Nacua breaking the all-time rookie receiving record. Sam Laporta breaking the all-time tight end record. Jahmyr Gibbs, an absolute sensation for the Detroit Lions. And then, of course, I don't think Bijan. I love Bijan. Wrong coach. Any other coach besides Arthur Smith and his bonehead decisions, Bijan probably would have won it. Unfortunately, not the case this year. CJ Stroud is the other one. I think C.J. Stroud could potentially sweep in two different categories. I think he could win Offensive Rookie of the Year and Rookie of the Year. I think he had that good of a year that he could. It wouldn't surprise me if in the Offensive Rookie of the Year, if Sam Laporta or Puka Nacua somehow pulled that out, and then C.J. Stroud won Rookie of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Joey Porter Jr., Kobe Turner, Devin Witherspoon. Hard to say. Devin Witherspoon was fantastic for the Seahawks. It's fantastic. Will Anderson, very, very good. Joey Porter Jr. started off rocky, but he ended up finishing the year definitely higher than what they thought out of training camp. So I think it's probably going to be Will Anderson or Devin Witherspoon that wins that award. Either very deserving, very good rookie years. And then comes to the interesting one, and there's a couple more, but we'll stop right here. Joe Flacco, DeMar Hamlin, Baker Mayfield, Matt Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa for AP Comeback Player of the Year. So, folks, this is the interesting one, right? AP Comeback Player of the Year. Any other year, man, what a conversation between, I think Baker Mayfield should. Baker Mayfield was prolific this year, coming off of a situation where people thought, would he have a job beyond last year? I mean, really. Then you got Joe Flacco off the couch, leading the Browns into the playoffs. And then, of course, Damar Hamlin, right? But let's be fair, guys. At the end of the day, there is no other way, no matter how you spin it, no matter how you twist it, Damar Hamlin has to win this award. I've heard a lot of people, oh, he's not playing. Oh, he doesn't, sees a little bit of the field. Oh, he's a special teamer. Damar Hamlin died on an NFL field, period. Damar Hamlin came back within less than a calendar year and made an NFL roster, which, by the way, there's only 53 spots on 32 teams for NFL athletes to make. And this guy who died less than a calendar year before on an NFL field was still able to beat out other people to make an NFL roster. And you can look at it and call him a backup, whatever. And backups, we can see, look at the Bills team alone, how important backups are. Damar Hamlin was very important. He is very important. And what he did was unbelievable coming back from what he did to be able to make an NFL roster and play, because he did play this season. No matter how much or how little he got on an NFL field after he had no pulse on an NFL field. So unbelievable stuff there. I think, I'm fairly confident. I'm pretty sure Damar Hamlin is winning this, but Baker Mayfield wins it. Congrats to him. And I'm very happy for Baker. What a long road. The Browns being such a tire fire of an organization. I'm glad he got his. I'm glad he's going to get paid. He has worked his tail off to get back into that. Coach of the Year is an interesting one, though, guys. That's where I'm going to finish off, and then we'll move on. Coach of the Year, Dan Campbell, John Harbaugh, DeMeco Ryans, Kyle Shanahan, Kevin Stefanski. I think there's a couple of people here. Kevin Stefanski, what he did with the Browns, getting them from, Deshaun Watson going down. I get that. I'm not a huge fan of the Browns. I think that organization is quite disgusting, to be honest with you, who they hired or, bringing in Deshaun Watson and how they did it. If I am anybody, I think DeMeco Ryans taking a team that was pretty bad and getting them to where he did, unbelievable job. Fantastic. He did a wonderful job taking that defense as a first-time coach, elevating that roster, elevating that quarterback with, CJ Stroud to where they are now. Fantastic job. I think DeMeco Ryans should win it. It wouldn't surprise me if it was something of a Dan Campbell or even a Kevin Stefanski. I'm kind of surprised Shane Steichen was not in the finalist. I think he did a very, very nice job. But moving on, let's go ahead and we're going to talk right now before we get into the next topic. We're going to go ahead and do our damn segment. In this week's Damn segment on Buffalo Late Night, we're stepping off the field and into the courtroom drama swirling around Brett Favre, who finds himself the reluctant star of a scandal overshadowing even his most memorable NFL moments. Favre, once a hero in the heartland of America, has been called out by the Mississippi State Auditor's Office for allegedly misusing welfare funds intended for the impoverished. The charge? Favre needs to repay $730,000 of $1.1 million he received for speaking fees for speeches that never happened. And for that, contributing to a volleyball arena project tied to his alma mater and his daughter's sport of choice. Favre's connection to this controversy comes with a hefty price tag, including the initial sum plus interest, making his debt to Mississippi not just a matter of financial recompense, but of public trust. Despite repaying some of the money, Favre's still in the red, with the state auditor expressing shock at Favre's handling of taxpayer dollars, especially those earmarked for helping the poor. This saga adds a complex chapter to Favre's legacy, intertwining his football heroics with a narrative fraught with legal and ethical compromise. The saga further unfolds with Favre's defensive play off the field, launching defamation lawsuits against critics, including notable figures like Shannon Sharpe and Pat McAfee. However, these legal maneuvers haven't always gone in favor of Brett Favre, highlighting a challenging post-football life that contrasts sharply with his on-field escapades. Favre's attempts to clear his name and reclaim his reputation have become as contentious and public as any game day battle he has ever faced. Thus, Brett Favre earns this week's damn trophy for not only his legendary arm, but his entanglement in the legal and ethical quagmire, proving that the game truly doesn't end when you leave the field. For Favre, this episode serves as a stark reminder that actions off the field can deeply impact the legacy built on decades of athletic excellence. As this story continues to unfold, it remains a compelling narrative cautioning against the exponential and potential fall from grace awaiting those who lose sight of their responsibilities beyond the stadium lights. There we are. That is this week's damn segment. Of course, all about the NFL and Brett Favre. And I kind of jumped ahead. I apologize, but kind of felt at that moment that would be a lot of fun. Guys, let's get into the NFL draft. Let's talk about it. We talked about Troy Franklin, of course, and all of that went down. And we talked with Spencer McLaughlin about Troy Franklin, the Oregon receiver. And guys, in terms of the NFL draft, there's a lot going on. There's a lot coming up. We have the Combine. We just finished the Senior Bowl week. We have the East-West Shrine game that just happened. Lots of stuff in terms of different, ways that you can gauge or judge or scout a player. But what we're going to do is we are going to do an NFL mock draft. But the reason I want to get into this, and we're going to talk a little bit, is where the Bills stand right now. And I've had a lot of conversations with people. And one thing I do want to mention, and I'm not going to get deep in this because I don't want to have this rehashed conversation, but people talked this week, and I mentioned about Stephon Diggs not being able to be traded. And the real reason truly beyond that is just the fact that the Bills, if they want to be able to have an offseason where they can make some complementary moves, they just cannot trade a guy with Stephon Diggs' dead cap hit. He has a $31 million dead cap, and whether you were, and I have heard people say, a post-June 1st trade, you still have a $9 million dead cap hit, and you still have an amount of money that the Bills would be reliant on that they couldn't use. And they would have to wait till June 1st to make any decisions because of that. So there's so much stuff that the Bills could and possibly should do that they want to make decisions on in terms of furthering this roster with a lot of holes, and that includes the NFL draft. But they have to make these decisions with the end goal in mind, and that includes having Stephon Diggs, which if you talk to a lot of people, you'll hear that even Stephon Diggs himself today in an interview with Kay Adams said he believes he wants to be with the Bills. He can't control the future, which is why a lot of these interviews happen. But Stephon Diggs himself has said he wants to be with the Bills. He wants to retire a Buffalo Bill. He wants to stay with the Bills. So why this stuff keeps happening is beyond me. But what I will say is the Buffalo Bills have a great opportunity in the NFL draft to fill some holes, to really kind of reconfigure what their roster looks like. And that starts from the top all the way down. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a mock draft here. We're going to do a mock draft from PFF. If you're watching, by the way, and you sent me a mock draft machine. I've tried some of them. One of them that I tried was glitching out, so I apologize if I'm not using it. I'm using PFF right now. It's the one that's going to work for us in terms of being able to give us what we're looking for the Buffalo Bills, kind of what we're thinking about. And what I'm going to do this week, last week, we were very much on the board of wide receiver, and we can still keep to that concept. But I want to do here is I want us to kind of think in terms of we're going to get the best possible player to put us in position for success. And we're going to look at, see if there's any trades that come to our way. We're going to look at what's going to help us in terms of the here and now. But what I want to look at is when the board comes around to pick, and we're going to slowly go through this, by the way, where if there's a trade that we think maybe moving up into the top 15, the top 10, that makes sense to get a guy like maybe Malik Neighbors falls into our lap, we'll do that. But what I want to do is I want to see, because with this situation, it says that the Buffalo Bills, wide receiver, tackle, defensive interior, linebacker, defensive back. I think safety is also included in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to see what falls into us, if there's a better scenario, excuse me, what's going to help us. But we're going to make the best possible decision to being able to garner the best possible talent. Again, cheers. So we're going to go ahead and start the draft. We'll go slow. We'll see what works. We're going to bring this down a little bit in speed-wise, and we'll see what people do, what teams take. We got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors going 4, Joe Alt, Roma Dunes, Marvin Harrison, Cooper DeJean, Brock Bowers, and Fashionau, right? Then we got Jared Verse, Jerjon Newton, defensive interior from Illinois. Good defensive tackle right there. So right now, all three wide receivers, the three big guns, Roma Dunes, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, all gone. All gone, which is kind of an expectation. You kind of know that's going to happen. Brock Bowers went, and then we still have a list of wide receivers. Still a lot of options there. So let's go ahead and let's run this off. Let's see what else we got going on. Bo Nix went, Dallas Turner, Fuaga, Terry and Arnold, a nice cornerback from Alabama. A lot of big name guys going off. Brian Thomas Jr. just went, Ladd McConkey. So let's go ahead and see what we got here. And look at this. Look at this. We are at the 28th pick. We've got Troy Franklin. We've got Byron Murphy Jr., a defensive tackle. We've got Tyler Guyton, who's a really, really good tackle. Not that we need one. Chris Broswell, a defensive end that we could use. There's a lot of different options. Let's see what trades we have here. We have a trade from the New England Patriots for 31. For 34. Apparently I can't read. So we could move back 6 spots. I don't know if I like the idea of trading with New England and giving them a chance to get a wide receiver and getting back into the first round. And I don't know beyond that, unless they're going to give us an extra pick here, giving us 68, I don't know if I really like the idea. I almost feel like get the wide receiver, call it a day, and move on. And I got to, obviously you guys are in the chat, but I kind of want to see what you guys think. In terms of if you guys are in the chat and you guys want to comment here as to what your perspective is, who we should draft. It's been a very quiet chat. We got Screw New England. By the way, hello Daniel, Laura, Franzo, David. Welcome. I appreciate you guys all being here. Guys, side note, hit that thumbs up. Means the world to me on our YouTube channel. Helps me out quite a bit. Let's go ahead and let's just take Troy Franklin. I think that's the best move and honestly kind of apropos considering who we had on tonight. So we're going to go ahead and take Troy Franklin and move on, see what we can get. And we'll kind of keep an eye on how everything goes when we get to pick 60. Let's go ahead and speed this up a little bit so we can kind of move through, get closer. Guys, obviously, when it comes to the draft, a lot of the stuff, and I know we talk in excess about what we think, what we want, but a lot of the stuff is kind of just... like I said last week, the Bills are in a position being so late that they're in the mercy of everybody else. We don't know what's going to happen. Brandon Beane, the rest of the front office are going to spend time going through mock drafts and what they believe is the best player to fill their roster, right? Whatever scenario works out the best, right? And in this, you're going to have a situation where guys are just going to fall sometimes into your lap that you like. And look right here. You got Braden Fisk, you got Tavondre Sweat, and we got a couple trades. Let's see what we got here. We've got Atlanta at 74, and they got 74 and 109. And then we got the Colts at 82 and 117. So here's the thing. I don't know if I really like the idea of dropping like 14 spots. We got Braden Fisk, who would be fantastic. Tavondre Sweat would be an unbelievable addition to this defense and fill a massive need for the Buffalo Bills. So I feel like you kind of got to go Tavondre Sweat here, even though I really, really, really like Braden Fisk. And Braden Fisk has been really good. Braden Fisk would be like our new age Kyle Williams. He's 6'5", a little thinner. He's 290, so he's not a big defensive tackle. He's more of a sleek kind of tweener defensive tackle. I like Tavondre Sweat, though. It fills a massive need. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I think that's the best move for us. We'll probably go to the end of round 3, and we'll wrap that up in terms of the draft because we do have one more thing to talk about in terms of free agency. So we'll do that. One thing I do want to do potentially before we get too deep is I might play Sean McDermott's clip again and see, because I want you guys to listen to what he had to say in terms of explosives. So let's see what this what this happens in this this one little segment where what we have available. So right here, now that we are at pick 99, we got actually a really nice pick. We got Tyke Smith, and here's the thing: Tyke Smith, if you don't know, we just signed our new defensive backs coach. and he actually worked with Tyke Smith. So there is a chance that if getting a guy like Tyke Smith, you're filling a position of need with safety and giving a guy who knows his new defensive backs coach. So I think that might be the move here. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to have Ian play a clip, okay? And Ian, go ahead, play that off in just 1 second. And it's going to tell you all about Sean McDermott, what he thinks in terms of explosives, because I think it's important in terms of this draft.
Look at your offense. Do you think that you lacked explosion in the passing game this year? What I mean by that, you've got guys that do well, Shakir, Diggs, underneath, intermediate stuff. Are you lacking that explosive nature, and is that going to be a focal point maybe in the offseason here?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be efficient, you want to be explosive. It's hard to be both, right? So it's hard to serve two masters. And that being said, however, you need to create explosive plays in order to. That's if you look at and you study the game. That's when you look at scoring points. Usually, a scoring drive has baked into it an explosive run or an explosive pass, or a big-time penalty, say, on the defense, right? So I understand that. We understand that, and that's a part of us moving forward as we look at our roster and we look at player acquisition, something that we need to take.
So that was the clip from Sean McDermott. The reason I kind of want to talk about this is because there is a couple pieces here, right? We got Tyke Smith, but there's also a couple guys like Jacob Cowing, Aeneas Smith, who is kind of a gadget. If you listen to a couple people who talked about him, including Chris Trapasso, who's from CBS Sports, he called him a water bug. He's kind of a little, I don't want to say a scat back, because I don't think that. Let's say you're talking about like Tank Dell last year, a guy that's a little bit speedier, kind of really quick in and out of his cuts, very agile. That's what Aeneas Smith is. And the reason I wanted that clip and importance of it, when we talk about Troy Franklin or guys like Aeneas Smith, those are the guys that can provide that speed, right? Those guys that can provide that explosiveness. But I think what I want to do in regards to that is I'm going to take Tyke Smith. I think that's important. And I think that's a really nice, like a fill to the end of this draft. So if you look and you take a look at what we've done so far, and I will bring this up. Give me 1 sec. I don't know why I can't see the rest of my draft. Well, I'll go ahead and I'll bring it up once I figure this out over here. But what I want to do in regards to this stuff is I want to talk about how this coincides with free agency. So obviously with that draft, and Ian, if you can go ahead and pull me up on the big screen, please. The draft is inherently dependent on what happens in free agency. And we talked about this last week, but there's some guys that are available in free agency. And I've mentioned a bunch of them. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see a lot of stuff, whether it's Curtis Samuel or Kyle Duggar or Jeremy Chin. I just talked about the other day. I mentioned with some of my guys on Cover One about Calvin Ridley. I don't think financially it'll work. But there's a bunch of different opportunities. Darnell Mooney's another guy that could really fulfill a role of a deep down or a deep field threat, but also that short to intermediate kind of screen game that Joe Brady likes to run in this offense. The reason I mentioned free agency and how that kind of impacts is with that Stephon Diggs thing that I mentioned earlier about, not trading him. You need all the dollars, all the restructures. I'm sure they're going to probably extend Josh Allen and restructure his number. They're probably going to restructure Stephon Diggs. They're going to extend, and you even saw a tweet from Rasul Douglas earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if they extend Taron Johnson. You might see a restructure across the board from a couple different players. And in fact, and I mentioned this in a tweet, go see Greg Thompson. You can see under previous videos that we did, his salary cap update. He talks about all the different things that we can do. The reason I mention this stuff is in terms of all those moves and what you can do, those afford you a certain amount of space, right? And those moves, like we saw last year, whether it's veteran minimum deals of $1.7 million or a Leonard Floyd deal of $7 or $9 million, those all coincide with how this draft looks, right? So in terms of going with Troy Franklin, and I'm fairly confident they're not going to go after a T. Higgins or Calvin Ridley or a Michael Pittman or a Mike Evans, though if they did, that would change the trajectory of what that first round pick is. In terms of the rest, though, there's potential that maybe they see somebody that they like, right? There are some guys that are available. Would they go defensive end at some point in the draft? Maybe. Or maybe they sign Mike Dana, who is a free agent from the Chiefs, who's a guy that Brandon Beane back in 2020 had his top 30 visit. So the reason I mention this stuff is all these things coincide as to how this draft looks. So each week we're going to be kind of highlighting, and I'll bring up different guys and who I think the Bills could potentially bring in. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see I highlight sometimes daily different free agents that I think could be potential fits for the Buffalo Bills. But in terms of the NFL draft, there's some great opportunities, some great players that I think the Bills would really benefit from in terms of fulfilling necessities. But I think just overall, the Bills are in a really nice position right now to, if they can get a couple smaller guys filled in free agency, will make the draft a much easier and smoother ride. I think overall, I think the Bills are in a position that it's going to be tough. There's going to be some potential question marks. Obviously, you saw there's some changes in the coaching staff. We saw John Butler is gone. They brought in a brand new coach. I'm forgetting the name, Ian. If you can give me the name of the new defensive backs coach for the Bills. But they brought in a new coach. He's from the University of Miami just recently. I'm blanking on his name. But the Bills have a great opportunity with some new coaching, some new defensive line. Bobby Babich is the new defensive coordinator. They elevated the assistant defensive line coach to defensive line. There's some philosophy changes, some new voices in the room, which maybe helps, maybe changes. Jamil Adai, he's the new cornerbacks coach. They are changing. They're pivoting. They're bringing some new ideas. You're going to see a new offseason full of Joe Brady and his offensive philosophy. I think there's just a lot to be desired, a lot to talk about. But what I want to do before we finish, I want to talk about Underdog Fantasy, one of Cover One's fantastic sponsors. Cover One is excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football. That is Underdog Fantasy. I want to tell you about the easiest way to get some action on NFL. It's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite or least favorite players' stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website, mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em entry. Get every pick right. Take home some cold, hard cash. Use the code COVER1 and get your first deposit doubled up to $500 by Underdog. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. And not only do they have NFL, but they've got Major League Baseball, NBA, and more. Get in the fun today. Join Underdog Fantasy and use code COVER1. Guys, that is that for tonight. And we're going to wrap things up right now, and I'm going to end it where we are. And I really do very much appreciate everybody that's been here. And anybody that's going to watch this afterwards, I appreciate you guys for tapping in and tuning in with us here at Buffalo Late Night. You can find me here every single week, every Thursday, Eastern, 7 p.m. here on the Cover One Sports Network. I truly do appreciate you guys. You can, again, find me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. I love you. I'll see you next week. Hopefully Josh Allen wins the MVP tonight. Maybe one could hope. But guys, heading into the NFL draft and more, let's restock the cabinet. Let's hope for some exciting times, and let's go Buffalo.